Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host Gershwan and you are watching OneMindSyndicate. Today we continue talking about Chaos Spacemarine Warbands as we get into the Brotherhood of Dust. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40K lore videos every single day. And don't forget to hit the little bell notification icon to stay updated. And if you enjoy our content, thank our patrons on Patreon. It's because of them that we can do this. Link in the description if you want to support. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on the Brotherhood of Dust. The Brotherhood of Dust is a Chaos Spacemarine Warband that consists primarily of powerful exiled Thousand Sun sorcerers founded by Amon, the former captain of the Ninth Fellowship of the Thousand Suns Legion and the equerry of the Primarch Magnus the Red. Amon once served as the tutor to Primarch Magnus the Red before the arrival of the Thousand Sun Spacemarine Legion on the world of Prospero during the Great Crusade. He eventually went on to become the Legion's first Prosperian Astarte as the direct invitation of Magnus. Amon rose through the ranks to become the captain of the Ninth Fellowship. As a potent psyker, he became the founder of the Legion's Corvidae cult and its first Magister Templi. He also served as equerry to Magnus, responsible for the Primarch's security and officiating certain sorceress rituals, among other duties. Amon would not only survive the Battle of the Great Crusade, but the raising of Prospero by the Space Wolf Legion during the early years of the Horus Heresy. At the height of this conflict, Amon witnessed the mortally wounded Magnus open a gateway through the warp into the Eye of Terror, where the demon world Sortarius, better known as the Planet of the Sorcerers, had been prepared for Magnus and the remnants of his legion by their patron god Tzeentch. Magnus was then turned into a demon prince by Tzeentch. Following their exile into the Eye of Terror, First Captain Azek Ahriman became hateful of their gene-sire. When the flesh change once again ran rampant amongst the survivors of the Thousand Suns, and Magnus seemed to accept it, Ahriman set out to find a cure for the rapid mutation. In his own hatred and hubris, and utterly unaware of the ludicrousness of attempting to use the very energies of change to stop change, Ahriman delved into the sorcerous knowledge held in the Book of Magnus, distilling the collection of formulas, incantations, and rites, and infusing the results with his own hatred for Magnus and the angst at the fate of his legion. Ahriman devised a canvas of mighty arcane spells that would ultimately undo the woes that had befallen their battle brothers, and thus protect them from the flesh change for all eternity. Preliminary testing of the spell, he called the Rubric, generated great promise, but he quickly discovered that he lacked the raw power required to achieve permanent results. He then set out to work, gathering those amongst the remaining officers of the Thousand Suns, who, like him, were disgusted by what had befallen their legion and their Primarch. Gathering in a circle around Ahriman, this cabal of sorcerers lent their powers to Ahriman, who then unleashed a full power of his desperate spell. Amon was amongst those who joined Ahriman's breakaway cabal, those who had always been the most headstrong and possessed of the most psychic powers in the Legion. Those that remained faithful to the Primarch were second-rate. They were the ones who had not dared to join the casting of the Rubric. The counter-sorcery affected them all, preserving less than 100 of the Legion's sorcerers and condemning the rest, known as Rubricae. They were set to dust as their physical bodies were transformed into spectral energy. In the aftermath of this catalysm, it became clear that the Rubric had either succeeded beyond all possible expectations or failed miserably, depending on how one would look at it. Ahriman, along with most of his cabal, were horrified by the result. Their brethren were now as they had intended, protected from the flesh change, though they paid for this protection with the destruction of their physical bodies. It was only later that Ahriman saw the awful truth of what he had created. Instead of purging the flesh of the ravaging mutation, each of the Thousand Suns had been transformed into unliving automatons. Magnus, angered beyond reason, assaulted the tower where Ahriman had gathered his coven. The other Chaos Sorcerers immediately knelt and abased themselves before Magnus's fury, but Ahriman remained standing, vindicated in his beliefs and utterly unrepentant. Before the Demon Primarch could strike down his former Chief Librarian, the Architect of Fate, Tzeentch himself, intervened, staying Magnus's hand. Instead, Ahriman, Amon, and the rest of his cabal were banished, exiled from the Planet of the Sorcerers. The exile affected Amon. Once considered one of the most loyal of Magnus's sons, Amon had been the hardest to persuade to join Ahriman's cabal. The most doubting, and the one most loyal to Primarch, besides Ahriman. He followed Ahriman, believing in him and allowing himself to dream as he did. The trust brought him the destruction of everything he held dearest. He had burned his hopes because he had trusted the former chief librarian. Though the rubric of Ahriman could not be undone, Amon became convinced that the only way to save his legion was to end it all. Amon was determined to find all the secrets of the rubric and perhaps restore some of his mindless undead brothers back to life. Over the next 1,000 standard years, as he continued to amass more power, Amon found his own powerful warband known as the Brotherhood of Dust, which consisted of many exiled Thousand Sons. He also gathered void ships, other Chaos Space Marines, hundreds of rubricae, and a number of apprentices, who they themselves became formidable Chaos Sorcerers in their own right. It was Amon's intent to see the suffering of his legion ended, for he would undo the fell magic of the rubric that had doomed his former battle brothers to this unlife, so that he could release their tortured souls. Yet despite all his grand schemes and designs, he still needed a wayward Ahriman, for only he possessed the necessary knowledge of the rubric. By direct orders of Amon, the Brotherhood of Dust maintained their pre-Horus Heresy Legion heraldry and colors of the Thousand Sons, favoring lacquer red with silver trim, as well as ornate crest on their helmets, similar to the striped cloth crowns once worn by the ancient Egyptian pharaohs of Terra. Amon sent out emissaries across the galaxy to chase rumors, no matter how minor, of the possible whereabouts of the former Thousand Sons chief librarian. During his quest, Amon came across other former members of the Thousand Sons. He sent his emissaries to his former brothers in the hopes of enticing them to join his warband. If they accepted, they would become part of the Brotherhood of Dust. However, those that refused faced the prospect of annihilation, both themselves and those that followed them. Eventually, Ahriman was discovered and captured by the Brotherhood of Dust. In an epic confrontation, the enraged Amon unleashed a powerful psychic attack against his former brother. During the ensuing duel, Ahriman revealed the final secret of the rubric to his former brother. It was a part of all Thousand Sons, bound into their very being. The rubric ran through them all, linking them, sustaining them. Its power was in Ahriman's hands. Unable to pull his mind away from Ahriman, the Chaos Sorcerer caused Amon to spontaneously combust from the powerful psychic energies unleashed from this arcane spell. Amon's armor came apart, each component pulling away from the other, spilling gray dust into the turning wind. The same vortex of warp power enveloped Ahriman and lifted him into the air, the separate pieces of Amon's armor aligning itself over his unarmored splayed body. Then one blade at a time, they slipped into place over Ahriman's flesh. Finally, Amon's horned helm slipped over Ahriman's skull. The minds of the living sorcerers of the Brotherhood of Dust teetered on the edge of indecision. Raising his hands, Ahriman summoned warp flames from the floor, which scoured the red lacquer from the armor of every rubricae and sorcerer. Then the flames flickered blue, and the silver armor became polished sapphire. Ahriman looked across the ranks of blue-armored warriors. Slowly, he knelt and bowed his head. He assumed the mantle of leadership of the Brotherhood of Dust, including its massive fleet and army of followers. It is unclear in Imperial records if the Brotherhood of Dust is the same warband that now is known as the Prodigal Sons that Ahriman currently leads in the 41st millennium. And those were 40 facts on the Brotherhood of Dust. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to thank our patrons on Patreon down in the description below. Just say you're awesome. If you guys want to support us, it's $1 a month. Link in the description. It goes a long way. You probably spend more on one container of paint than you do on supporting the channel. So thank you ahead of time. More lore on the Chaos Warbands, but specifically the successor chapters of the Thousand Sons. We're going to do a big Thousand Sons successor chapter video pretty soon. Any suggestions for ones that you have heard of that you want us to create a single standalone video for, just comment down below. But yeah, thanks for everything, guys, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. This is Gershwan with OneMindSyndicate signing out.
Oh, if you took my freedom.